Hey guys, if you love the early 2000s chunky hair trend, then keep watching because we're going to be adding some chunky dimension into my client's color. If you want, you guys can follow me on Instagram at Christy@thecottage. Here's my client's hair. This is her first time coming to see me. She has long blonde hair. It's pretty just a kind of bland one color blonde. So we're gonna freshen her up with some brighter blonde and add some dimension that she's been wanting. Directly on her hairline, I'm going to be doing about 3 to 4 really fine blonde weaves. And she said that even though we're adding the darker dimension pieces, she still wants to be pretty bright right around her face. So I'm going to be doing the 3 weaves of blonde directly on her hairline with a minimal subsection. And then I'm going to be putting just one pop of dark color at the very back of that subsection. That way she has a little bit of that darkness kind of framing her face, but it's sitting back a little bit further so she's not going to feel washed out or feel like she has too much dark anywhere. And then also right at the very top of the hairline, when I do like the bang area, you'll notice that I am doing more of like a V subsection just because, I'm sorry, not a subsection, more of a V sectioning because that's kind of how her hairline grows. So the very first foils that I'm putting on in her bang area, I want to make sure that I'm incorporating the dark color that we're going to be adding because I don't want her to be just like super bright blonde and super heavy like right in the front, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere we're adding these darker pieces, but it doesn't like blend with anything else. So just to incorporate this color just a little bit, I'm going to be going right on her hairline because she wears bangs, so it's going to be falling underneath the blonde, so it's not going to be like the first thing that she sees. I'm going to be doing a very, very, very fine baby light of a weave directly on her hairline, and then every foil that I'm going to be doing that like right in here when I go in. This section right here is going to be a dark weave that I'm going to be foiling into her hair. And then on the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. But the next few foils that I'm doing after this, because she wants to be brighter in the bang area especially, I'm going to be doing some weaves and I'm going to be brightening her up with some blonde. I have to apologize to you guys because when she first came in, I had no intention of recording the service. And then as I got into the service, I was like, oh, I feel like this is something my subscribers would really want to watch because I do a lot of blonding services, but I don't do a lot of like dimensional blonde with like the chunky foils. And I feel like this is something that's kind of becoming a bigger trend again, no matter if it's like being more modernized or just kind of like the old school style. And I know I've done like maybe 1 or 2 videos on chunky foils, and it's something that other people have asked me to keep doing. And it's like kind of a rare occasion when somebody comes in and they're like, oh yeah, give me the old school chunky foils. So I really, after I mixed my color, I was like, I really should record this for my subscribers because I feel like you guys would want to see the service and understand more how to like do your placement and everything for the chunkiness. So I didn't record when I was mixing my color. So I'll just let you know right now I'm using my Schwarzkopf BlondeMe with 20 volume and olaplex, which is the same lightener that I use for every color. And then for her darker tone that I'm going to be adding, I'm using Matrix SoColor with 20 volume for gray coverage, and I'm doing half and half with half 507N because that's the gray coverage line, and then half 506NA. That way it's not too warm and it just is going to cool it down a little bit without being like too brassy of a warm tone. So half 507N and half 506NA for her colors that I'm using. And I apologize that I didn't record this. I was kicking myself, but it was kind of like a last minute decision to record. So anyways, I apologize for that. Okay, so in her foiling, I just got done doing her bang section. This is like my first section coming out of the bangs. And so right here, I did kind of a really fine weave, probably just like an average section, not like a baby light or anything like that. So I'm doing 2 weaves back to back with no subsection for her dark chunkiness. So you can see here that I'm doing a weave, and it's not going to be like such a strappy chunk because we are weaving it. She is going to have that pre-existing color that she has kind of blending through the dark that we're adding. So it's going to kind of break it up a little bit to kind of soften the chunkiness up. And I'm probably going to get off track and like keep rambling about like a whole bunch of other things. So I'm just going to tell you right now, my pattern that I'm doing is, now that I'm into the dark color, I'm going to be doing 2 weaves back to back with the brown. And then directly after that, I'm going to be doing 2 weaves back to back of blonde, and then 2 weaves back to back of brown, 2 weaves back to back of the blonde. And I'm just going to follow that through the back section of her head. So that way, you know, ahead of time, like how my foil pattern is going to be going. So one thing, if you do this service on a client, I feel like there's so many things that you could ask them for what they want when they're adding dimension, because she has had such soft grow out. This is my first time doing her hair, by the way. So she's not a regular client. I don't really know how she likes to wear her hair. What is her maintenance schedule like? Does she like coming in like on a strict schedule, or does she like to be able to go quite a while? So I wasn't really sure how she was going to react to having a heavy grow outline. So I really wanted to make sure that I was covering my bases and asking her all the right questions. And so she said that she really wants to see a lot of dimension going through her hair. She feels like her hair at this point has just gotten so light that it's just kind of like it all just blends together and just looks like a one-tone blonde, kind of like a golden color with no like brighter pieces or anything. So we definitely want to brighten her up a little bit, but I have to be careful because I've never bleached her hair and I don't know if it will be damaged or not. So to start, I'm just going to be tapping her roots and refreshing that up with the bleach. And then later on in the service, I'm going to be pulling the bleach through the ends. But as for right now, one of the questions that I asked her was, are you going to be okay with having a heavy grow outline? Because as of right now, her grow out is pretty soft. But when I asked her that, she's like, oh, I feel like my grow out is so bad right now. And I'm like, honestly, your grow out kind of blends pretty nicely. Like, yeah, you have grow out, but it's not like a harsh line. Like when we do like the chunky foils, because you're going to see like blonde, brown, like streaks in the hair, the line of demarcation is going to be like much more apparent. So make sure you're asking your clients, like, how are they going to feel about the grow out line? Do they want to be stuck on a really strict schedule of feeling like they have to come in a lot sooner because the line is starting to bother them? So one of the things that I was going to offer her as an option to do for color is maybe do like the softer blonde directly or where her part is, and just like go down the mohawk with more of just the blonde color. But then in the underneath section of the hair, doing more diagonal weaves back to back. That way we incorporate some of the brown pieces that she's wanting for some like ribbons of dimension. But she said she felt pretty confident and comfortable with having the darker chunks. And like she literally said chunks. So that makes me feel comfortable knowing that she's like prepared to having some really big pieces in there of dimension. Pay attention to the words that your clients use. If somebody just says like the term streaks, then chances are that they want to see like some really bold dimension, but they want it to be piecey, but not necessarily like a huge strap of color. The fact that she said chunks makes me feel confident that she's not going to be like, oh my God, that is like such a big, huge piece of brown and a big, huge piece of blonde. So I kind of explained to her like the different looks, and I pulled it up on Pinterest. Like when you think of having like your blonde and brown like chunks in your hair, do you imagine them being like solid chunks where it just looks extremely strappy, like a solid brown, a solid blonde? And in that case, if that's the kind of look that somebody wants, where it's like very harsh lines of those colors, then I would recommend doing like maybe 2 slices, even 3, depending on how big of a section they want, but doing 2 to 3 slices back to back of the blonde, and then 2 to 3 slices back to back of the brown. And that's going to create that extremely heavy, like very apparent blonde, very apparent brown. But for her, I told her that because this is the first time I'm doing your hair and I'm adding this dimension and I really don't know what you're comfortable with, I want to kind of introduce the color into your hair and ease our way into it, because you can always go more solid and go darker or whatever, but it's harder to lift that color out, or it's harder to minimize it once it's already there. So I told her I feel like the best bet that we could go is doing like some weaves back to back. That way she has the definition there and the darker colors, but because we're weaving it, she's gonna have this pre-existing color to kind of break it up a little bit, so it softens it like just a little bit. She's definitely gonna have that pieciness and that darkness of dimension that she's wanting. It's just not gonna be like those huge strappy colors that you see in some of those chunky foils. So those are just some different ways that you can ask your clients like what type of chunky look do they want. Another thing also is that I feel like when you do the chunky foils, it can be like such a strong pattern. I don't recommend that. Like, that's not the kind of look that I like when I see chunky foils. I really actually like foiling the hair this way, because I do think it's really pretty, and I don't see why people give it such a bad like rep, like saying, oh, those chunky 2000 foils are so ugly or whatever. I think they're really pretty. This was like my thing, 15 years ago when I was foiling hair. I really loved doing these kind of colors, but I really liked doing more dimensional pieces. Like maybe I would do a few brighter pieces of blonde and like a really big piece of brown, but then like some smaller pieces of brown with like some little weaves of blonde. That way it kind of breaks it up. And yeah, you have those like dimensional pieces that are a little bit more bold, but then you still have some softer tones in there. That way it looks a little bit more like, I don't want to say natural, but just it doesn't look so like patterned and structured, you know what I mean? So play with this color. It definitely is coming back in style. One way that you could modernize this, I've done a foil pattern before, is if you go down the mohawk, like especially if you're just doing blonde, I feel like it might not look good if you're doing like the two tones, because then it might just look like grow out. But if you're doing just blonde and somebody wants it a little bit chunkier and a little bit more like dimensional, then you could do your subsections and back comb them and then foil them as normal. And I feel like that would kind of soften the roots a little bit. But then as the hair flows through the ends, it will become like a nice piecier blonde, like through the midsection of the blonde piece in the hair. So I feel like I've rambled on forever, which is, something I'm guilty of in all of my videos. But for these side pieces here, I'm starting with a blonde, and then I'm doing just a fine little subsection, and then I'm gonna go through and add a dark. And for all of these pieces that I'm doing on the sides of her head, I'm doing a blonde weave, subsection, brown weave, subsection, blonde weave, subsection, and then all the way down until I get to the ear and I end on a blonde. So yeah, anyways, hopefully that wasn't confusing. I know I can just completely go off, but I just really wanted to explain the different ways of doing like the chunky foils, and to make sure that you talk about it with your client, because they could have something in mind, and there's so many different styles to this that you want to make sure that you get it right with your client. So pull up pictures. Don't be afraid to use pictures or for guidelines or whatever, and make sure that they're on the same page as you, because once you go darker with this color, you're pretty much stuck there. It's almost impossible to break through the color if they feel like they've added too much dark. So in her case, I told her I feel like it would be best if we went a little bit softer with the brown, maybe not go too dark, because if you end up feeling like, what did I do, or end up not liking the chunkiness, then it's going to be hard to eliminate that color. So if it's somebody that is like, this is the first time that they're doing the color and they're kind of unsure of it, I would maybe start with something that's not as dark, because you can always go darker after the initial appointment. So now that we're on this side of the head, we're going to do the same thing that we did on the other side, just the blonde weave, subsection, brown weave, subsection, and so on until we get to the ear. And then from there, we will do the hairline foil. And for that area, I'm not really going to add a whole bunch of dark. I really want to maintain a lot of the existing color that she has, because even though she wants to add some dimension, I don't want her to feel like she has darker hair now all of a sudden. So we're just going to add just some really fine weaves through the rest of her hair of the dark, but not too much to where she's going to feel dark. By the way, I wanted to show you the difference. This is more of a blended, chunky look where you can tell that there's different size of weaves and maybe a little bit more of a weave to break up the brown. And this one is definitely more of a strappy look where it's like brown chunk, blonde chunk, brown chunk. So I just wanted to put those in there so you guys could kind of see the difference between having more of a blended chunkiness and having like softer dimension versus having huge straps of chunks, and trying to make it clear and decipher what type of chunks the client is looking for. Sorry if those images didn't come through very clear, if they were kind of grainy. I was trying to pull something off of the internet just like last minute, just to kind of give you guys an idea of what I'm trying to explain. But now that we've finished the sides of the head, we're going to go through and do just the nape of her neck, and we're just gonna pop in like 2 to 3 weaves of blonde just right down at the hairline, just to kind of break it up, because she does have a little bit of grow out and it is quite a bit darker in this area. So we want to make sure that she has a nicer blend for when she pulls her hair up, and it will just kind of grow out a little bit softly. And here you can see a little bit better the size of foil that I'm doing. Not too thick of a section, just really fine weaves, but not like a heavy foil with a slice or anything. And then as we work our way up the back, I'm just going to be doing like a blonde weave, subsection, brown weave, subsection, and so on and so forth until we reach to the top of the head. Okay, so this is everything. We did a full two-tone foil today. And now I'm going to go through and check around her hairline first before I actually do this part. I want to make sure that her hairline doesn't overprocess. So I pulled out any of the blonde foils that were done to make sure that she doesn't have any breakage. And because we lifted lighter than the ends of her hair, I'm now going to go through with the bleach that's been sitting there for quite a while, so I know that it's not going to be damaging. And I'm going to go and run it through the ends of her hair to brighten her up a little bit in that area. And I thought that this would be really pretty because sometimes I feel like when you have like such a high contrast, like very dark and then very bright blonde, I feel like it just, I mean, we know it looks fake, but sometimes I feel like when you have a mid-tone in there, it just kind of softens the color up and makes it look a little bit nicer. So I thought having like her subsections would be really nice for the color. So that way it will kind of soften the tone and just add like a little bit more dimension in there and everything. So we're going to have like a brighter blonde, a medium blonde, and like the darker brown color. So I just let it sit through the ends for maybe like 5 minutes to brighten it up a little bit more. And now we're going to go to the shampoo bowl. And to be honest, her hair got nice and bright, so I didn't have to tone her with anything. I just used my Fanola No Yellow shampoo, and that brightened her up and gave her a really nice bright blonde. And this is exactly what she wanted, just having those ribbons of color, lots of dimension through her hair. Again, this is what her hair looked like when she first came in, just kind of drab and plain and not anything special. And look at this color, it's so pretty. She has these really pretty bright blondes, some softer pieces in there with that dimensional color. And you can see that she does have that contrast in there. But because it was blended with the weaves and everything, it doesn't look too heavy or harsh. And everything just looks like it fits nicely. Like it's not too big, it's not too small. Like it's just the right size. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comment section below. Thank you for taking the time to watch. And please don't forget to like and subscribe.